Good morning. As we go to the Chitas of today, we're holding in the book of Shemos, second portion, the portion of Eidah. We're holding in chapter 6, verse number 29. Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe, and God spoke to Moshe, Lamer, saying, Ani Hashem, I am God, Dabum al Pare, Melech Mitzrayim, speak to the Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Eskol Asher Ani Develech, everything that I'm speaking to you. Now she says, this is the very same speech stated above in the previous verse. Come speak to Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Verse 11. But since the Torah interrupts again with the lineage of Moshe and Aaron, so therefore returns to the previous statement. Ani Hashem, I am God, I have the power to send you and also to fulfill the words of my mission. Moshe lifnei Hashem. Moshe Rabbeinu again said to God, behold, I'm closed lips. And how is Pharaoh going to listen to me? Then Rashi says, this is not a new statement. This is a statement that Moshe Rabbeinu said above again. Behold, the children of Israel did not hearken to me. And why will Pharaoh listen to me? Scripture repeats it here because it interrupts the topic of the lineage. And now we go back to the previous story. Chapter 7, verse number 1. God said to Moshe, see, I've made you a lord over the Pharaoh, and Aaron, your brother, will be your speaker. Now she says, I made you a judge and a chastiser, to chastise him in the plagues and the torments you're going to put him through. What over here means Neviecha. Neviecha is a prophet, but over here the Hebrew there's a Targum. Now she goes to the Targum, and over here means Miturgamach, means your interpreter. Every expression of Nevuah, prophecy, denotes a man who publicly announces to the people the words of reproof. It is derived from the root I created speech, Niv, of the lift, Nifs of Asayim. Yonuv, wisdom, and as we find in Vayichalmas by Shmuel Hanavi, and in Old French it's called Rid advocate. I will speak. You shall speak all that I've commanded you. And your brother Aaron will speak to the Pharaoh. And he'll send the Jewish people out of his land. Now she says, once every message you have heard from my mouth, and Aaron, your brother, will interpret it, explain it to the Pharaoh's ears. Verse 3, but I'm going to harden his heart. And I will multiply, increase my miracles, my signs, my wonders, my wonders, bad as Mitzrayim, in the land of Mitzrayim. Rashi says, I'll harden the Pharaoh's heart, since Pharaoh behaved wickedly and defied me, and I know full well that there's no delight amongst the nations to make a wholehearted attempt to repent. It's better for me that his heart be hardened, so that I can increase my signs and my wonders in him. And you will recognize my mighty deeds. And so is the custom of the Holy One, blessed be He. He brings retribution on the nations, so that Israel should hear and fear. And it said, I've cut off the nations, their towers have become desolate. I said, surely you'll fear me, you'll accept reproof. Nevertheless, the first 5 plagues, it does not say, and the Lord strengthened Pharaoh's heart, but the Pharaoh's heart remained steadfast. So the first 5 plagues, even though over here it says that God says, I'll strengthen his heart, we don't see that ultimately until the 5th plague. Pharaoh is not going to listen to you. I'm going to put my hand on the land of Egypt. I will take out my legions and my people, Bnei Yisrael, children of Israel, Meretz Mitzrayim, from the land of Egypt, with great judgments. Verse 5, Yodim Mitzrayim, and the Egyptians will know, Yani Hashem, I am God. When I will stretch my hand over the Egyptians, it says, and I'll take the children of Israel from the midst of the Egyptians. Yodi, Yod Mamish, a real hand, Lahake says to strike them. It's not going to be a spiritual punishment, it's a physical punishment. But Yas Moshe Aaron, and Moshe and Aaron did, which God commanded them, Cain also. Moshe ben Shmeinu Shana. Moshe was at this time 80 years old. Aaron ben Shalosh Shmeinu Shana. Aaron was 83 years old. B'dabrim apare, when they came before the Pharaoh. That completes the Chumash for today. We continue the 14th chapter of Tanya. What the Rebbe is explaining the concept of a tzaddik, a beinoni, and he explained yesterday that therefore it's written, but also tzaddikim. Eov says, you have created the righteous, you've created, but also the shoyim. You created righteous. We explained that a righteous person, that's his own free will. We explained that that's not true. That to be righteous is a gift of God. And therefore, Barasa tzaddikim, the Eibishter made sure that the world would always have tzaddikim. Because that's a gift. And that's something that the Eibishter gives somebody if he deserves it, or he's born to begin with the potential of being a tzaddik. But most people don't have that schus, don't have that merit. And therefore, their obligation is to be a beinoni. We'll explain later what means that God created the Shoim. And this will understand what we mentioned in the beginning of Tanya. We mentioned a Mishnah. The Mishnah says before the Neshama comes down to the world, the Eibishter calls the Neshama into his, so he calls up the Neshama from the chamber of souls, and he tells him who he's going to be born, etc. And he makes him make a vow. That what? Tihi tzaddik, val tihi rasha. So the double vow. Be a tzaddik, the vow is be a tzaddik, and don't be a rasha. What can it be? One vow. Be a tzaddik. And that's it. The second you're a tzaddik, you're not going to be a rasha. So why is there a double vow? Be a tzaddik and don't be a rasha. Be a tzaddik and not be a rasha. Quoted in the Talmud in the opening of Tanya, the first chapter of Tanya. Chayr Tamua, some Sechta Nida, right? The first glance question, if you make him make a vow that he should be a righteous person, so when you make a vow, I'm going to be righteous, doesn't mean I'm not going to be wicked. So why does he need to make a second vow, don't be wicked? So the answer is, so as I said before, the Alter Rebbe says, not everybody is privileged to be a tzaddik. And nor does a person the full advantage of choice in this manner. Kolkach, the Alter Rebbe in Hebrew, kolkach, not much, as Alter Rebbe say that if a person wants to push the envelope and he wants to push God that he should be a tzaddik, he can reach the level of a tzaddik. But in general, it's not in the realm of everybody to be a tzaddik. To have a delight of God, and as the Alter Rebbe says many times, the word be'emes, in truth. Yeah, we all can say we have a delight in God. But the question is, be'emes, is that the truth? Is that the emes? That's my emes, so that's moments of inspiration. She emerges mamish in the same way, the same concept, just like he has love of God in truth, or delight in God in truth. She emerges be'emes, that he should also actually truly abhor evil, be'emes, in truth. So we can again say that we hate evil. Who doesn't hate evil? We all hate evil, but we tolerate it. That means we don't hate it really. be'emes, in truth. That's why we make him make another shvur. You should not be a Rasha. Each person can, consequently, we give him a second vow. Don't be a Rasha. So even if a person is not privileged to become a tzaddik, he should at the very least not be a Rasha. Being instead of what you should be is a Beinani. The Alter Rebbe again emphasize that what's our avodah, what's our responsibility, what's our capability, and therefore that's what we need to do, is we should be a Beinani. With regard to not being a Rasha and being a Beinani is the right choice and freedom and extend to every man. Don't be a Rasha. Be a Beinani. Lim shoberuach tavasei, to control the spirit of lust in his heart. Shebelibai, which is alich v'yitzrei, to conquer his nature. He shouldn't be wicked even 1 hour. Kol yom of all throughout his life. Whether it's in the realm of turning away from evil, which means refraining from transgression. Whether it's in the concept of doing good. And the concept of doing good, what is good is the learning of Torah. So a person should always learn more. There's never enough Torah that a person can learn. There's never one of the Vedas a person keeps on doing every day is bittul Torah. Is neglecting the learning of Torah. The Talmud Torah keneged kulam, the learning of Torah, which is equal to all other mitzvahs. So by reason of freedom of choice granted him, one is expected to surmount even the most difficulty of faithful observing the most difficult mitzvah of constant Torah study. Bittul Torah. Did I do a moment in the day that I didn't learn Torah? I could have learned and I decided not to learn, do something else. For this reason, the oath is administered a second time. Even if one does not have the opportunity to become a tzaddik, it's still possible and therefore expected of him not to be a Rasha. Do not be wicked, even a second in your life. So in essence, in truth, we have the capacity. Nobody can say that he doesn't have the capability to not to do something bad and not to do something good. There's no mitzvah that I cannot accomplish, and there's no Aveda that I cannot overcome. The Alter Rebbe now goes on to state that everyone should strive to emulate a tzaddik service of God. Although you may not actually reach the rank of tzaddik, specifically, one should refrain oneself to loathe worldly pleasures, and conversely, should try to awaken in himself the delight of God, love of God, which is accomplished reflecting deeply on his greatness, thereby fulfilling the charge to be a tzaddik to the best of his abilities. So that's the vow, to be a tzaddik, that we all should try to be tzaddikim, even though we might never be a tzaddik in reality, but we should try to be tzaddikim, to love God like a tzaddik, to hate the concept of what's the opposite of God like a tzaddik. Nevertheless, though he said not every person can loathe evil and attain the love of the light characterized as a tzaddik, as you were dealing here with the Beinani, yet one must set aside specific periods to seek for himself means of abhorring evil, meaning the loathing of worldly pleasures. That a person should look, how should a person look at somebody else's wife? The Alter Rebbe gives you, again, the Alter Rebbe and Tanya sometimes gives us the most stark and most strong expressions and examples of Torah, and we find this in the Gemara. The Gemara says how a person should look at somebody else's wife. Isha chemes malitzaya. You can't look at somebody else's wife and say, "Oh, she's a beautiful woman." Oh, look at this the beautiful woman. Oh, if something that is not you, that's not for you, then that you're praising somebody, another person's wife, then in essence, then you're looking, you can see the beauty in another person's wife. And that's why the Gemara says you should look at it in essence like to you. It's a concept of a woman, a vessel filled with filth. It should look at something that's negative, totally negative. Because the second a person starts to praise and starts to see the beauty, he might see the beauty in that other person more than the beauty of his own wife. That's why the Gemara says, that Rebbe explains the Gemara of Rabbi Shammai, who says, seeing another person beautiful, seeing the beauty in another person's wife, was another woman in general, not a person's wife, another woman in general, not your wife, is already a concept of the separation in this marriage. You don't have to come to do an aveda in this marriage, infidelity in the marriage. That you can see the beauty in somebody else's, another woman, that already shows that there's something wrong in this relationship. So too, one may learn to despise gluttony by reflecting that all dainties and delicacies similarly become a vessel full of waste. So therefore, you have to look at everything ultimately. That's the opposite of godliness. If you really want to work on yourself, even though you cannot do that, like the Rambam says, if somebody has anger, how do you overcome anger? Somebody has that situation. The Rambam says you have to go 180 degrees the other way, that nothing angers you. Then you'll come back in the middle. So you're not going to have a situation where you're going to hate evil. It's not in your reality, and therefore you're going to see the beauty in other situations. But you need to try to accomplish that that you can create this aspect to go 180 degrees the other way. And try to have, as Alter Rebbe saying, you should make a time to abhor something that's the opposite of godliness. Try to have a concept which you can create in your mind, the concept of the hate, and that is disgusting to you. Something that's the opposite of godliness, something that's the opposite of what belongs to you, something that the opposite of what's out of your what you shouldn't be doing. And maybe if you'll train yourself, that you'll come middle of the way. You'll come at least in the middle of the way. The Chen told Tainuga Elam Hazeh, likewise regarding all pleasures of this world. The wise man foresees what becomes of them. That ultimately rot and become worms and refuse. So ultimately, that's the Mishnah, it's a statement in Mishnah. So ultimately, where's everything come? Where's everything of this physical world come? It comes nothing. Turns into worms. So it's nothing. It's ultimately, like I always say, consider the most fancy restaurant. Suddenly, if a cockroach comes by, you get sickening. You cannot eat the food anymore. It becomes disgusting to you. So the truth is, everything is that way. Everything in the physical world ultimately turns to nothing. So you shouldn't have any pleasures. So what are you creating a pleasure in the physical world if it ultimately turns to worms? Something that every human being becomes sickened by. So you should, therefore, if you can create, ultimately it's very hard for a person that has an nefesh of Bahamas to be able to accomplish that in a general form. But if you're never going to understand the concept, if it's never going to be to you this concept in my mind, that ultimately I understand that that ultimately I understand that ultimately everything turns into dust and worms and maggots. If I cannot understand that, so I'll never be able to separate myself from Gashmis. So maybe then I'll be able to deal with Gashmis in a real way. So that's why I'll tell you, Russia, I will not deal with Gashmi, the physical world, the pleasures of the world, as a Russia, as a person that's a gluttonous person. But I'll use Gashmi out to the best of my ability. Which the truth is, that's my Avodah. The tzaddik is above that. My Avodah is to deal with Gashmis because I have a connection to the physical pleasures of the world. And maybe I will do the right thing with it. Maybe, hopefully, if I can put it in its right place, to realize that that's really Avodas HaBerurim. That's a separation, that I use the Gashmi for something spiritual. But if I only love the Gashmi, the physical, for itself, so I'll never be able to separate the issues. I like the Gashmi. I enjoy the physical world for itself. And now it becomes, what happens with that self ultimately? Garnished. Turns into dust. Turns into the earth and its maggots. That's what it is. If I can imagine that thing, as Alter Rebbe said, Losh Eitzes Benafshay, to find, to seek for self, you know what I'm saying, make a period in your time, think about it. Know the truth. Know that ultimately all this physical pleasures that I'm connected to, that I am involved with, is garnished. Worse than garnished. Worse than nothing. Becomes something disgusting. So therefore, let us right now, as we get involved in this physical world, right now separate the issues. Right now, to be able to take the Gashmi, the physical pleasure, and use it out for good. Use it out for Dafashim Kedusha right now. And that's what the Alter Rebbe wants a Beit to do, because I'll never get rid of my Nefesh HaBahamis. I'll never get rid of my animalistic soul that has a connection to this Gashmi, that has a connection to this physical thing and the pleasures of this physical thing. So in this way, one cultivates an abhorrent of worldly pleasures. It will ultimately cultivate that, you know what? That it's not for the pleasure of the physical. I'm going to ultimately teach myself that even all this physical world, there's a purpose in it. It's not just for the physical agenda. It's not just for the physical pleasure. There's a godly purpose. God created this physical thing. And if God created it, then there has to be a godly purpose. And that's why, and I'm going to flip it over, I'm going to slowly learn to have more tainug and joy in godliness. Through my reflecting on the greatness of God. Self-understood, the spiritual entity in this thing is greater than the physical, because the physical turns to nothing and the spiritual lives on. So therefore, the spiritual is much greater. It's self-understood, every person, his capacity. Even though he knows in himself, he knows himself. Everybody knows his soul. That ultimately cannot reach up to this level of Pashut, not seeing the Gashmi, only seeing the Ruchni, not seeing the physical part of the thing, only seeing the spiritual. That's a tzaddik. That is a righteous person. This is only in your imagination. So to a Beinoni, it's still an imagination. It's a concept. To a tzaddik, it's not a concept. It's not an imagination. To him, he sees the ruchni. He sees the spiritual thing. He abhors the physical. He pashut sees the spirituality in that physical thing. To me, I don't. To me, it's in my mind that I comprehend. I understand that everything physical, there's a spiritual purpose. So he will fancy that he truly abhors evil and delights in godliness. Why then should he exert himself merely to produce a fantasy, especially in the service of God, when sincerity is essential, so he's not going to be truthful totally. So here the Alter Rebbe tells us something that it's a truth to him. Nevertheless, he should do his part. The Eibush doesn't come and ask you to do something to be a tzaddik. The Eibush, God, who comes to you to the level you're in, to who I am and says, you be you. And if you are truly you, then you accomplished this concept. Nevertheless, the Abba says, you made a vow. You made a vow to be a tzaddik. And God will do what is fit in his vad. God will do what is fit, what he sees fit, whether to grant it to level tzaddik or not. You have to do yours. That's another expression in the Mishnah. You don't have, the Eibush has to finish the job. You have to do your best. And if this is your best, as the Alter Rebbe is saying, it says many times, that's your truth and that's your best. Don't fool yourself again saying it's your best when it's not your best. I have to do my best. Furthermore, Emily and tzaddik and loathing evil and delighting God produces another benefit for the Bane. Number 2 is faking it makes it. Habit reigns supreme in all matters. That's the way the Eibush created a person. That when it becomes a habit, it becomes teva shein, it becomes a second nature. So maybe if you create this habit by hating evil, which we all should hate evil. We all know that should be something that's an abomination to us. Anything that's the opposite of God should be an abomination to us. That's the truth. So therefore, I'm going to fake it that it's an abomination to me. And I'm going to talk myself into it that it's an abomination to me. And that it's a disgusting thing to me. And ultimately, you know what? It's going to become disgusting to me. And when a person becomes accustomed because he worked on himself and he slowly talked himself into it, and he slowly starts to hate evil, then he will surely loathe it in his truth. And he would truly hate Saddam. Even though he's not a tzaddik. He will slowly hate. And the truth is, we see that. The Alter Rebbe says that the truth is, we see that everybody has some tzaddik in himself. We have certain things we hate. We have certain evils that really we hate. When we hear it, it affects us. We feel it. When we hear a terrible thing happens, we feel it. Why? Because we hate evil. And it affects us physically. We loathe the concept of evil. Murder, for example. That affects us. So in that aspect, the truth is we're a tzaddik. In that moment, that we loathe evil. Question is, can we create this loathingness in other things in our life? But we can do that. We do that. And what happens if you start the other way in the Sur Meirah? This is in Sur Meirah, going away from evil. Start loathing evil. And now start to accustom oneself to rejoice in God. Through reflecting in God's head. So everybody can sit and meditate a little bit on the greatness of God and start dancing a little bit. Start being happy. Start being happy of the greatness of God that's in your mind. And start being happy. Start bringing joy into your life. In general, people that struggle with joy need to start practicing in joy. Start being happy. Let it be slowly. Start off for one day, a minute a day. Somebody, it's hard to be happy. Even a minute might be a long time. Start working on that. Be happy a minute, and you'll see. Hergel Nasa Teva. Alter Rebbe over here gives us a great way of changing our lives slowly. Because we think that we have to change either all or nothing. That's one of the tricks of my Yetzer Hara that tells me it's either all or nothing. And if I cannot do it all, I cannot do nothing. That's not true. Every minute of the day counts. And if I can bring joy in the day 1 minute, then it's a great accomplishment to my neshama, that 1 minute of joy. So let me start practicing. I struggle with joy to bring in 1 minute of a day of total joy. That's why I mentioned before about the Rambam, right? Same thing. Go 180 degrees Not the whole time. You cannot do that if you're not a joyful person. You need to do 1 minute a day. Start practicing 1 minute a day to be totally joyful, nothing in that minute. It might be a very long minute. But ultimately, you prove yourself that you can do 1 minute. And maybe after a couple of 1 minutes every day, you'll go to 2 minutes. And you'll accomplish it. You're going to bring joy in your life. So then also the principle of arousal of man below corresponding to arousal above. Perhaps after all this effort, the spirit of the Ruach from above will ascend upon him. The Eibishter will bring you simcha. If we create, this is a general concept of Chassidus, asarusa de la tata, asarusa de la ela. The awakening from above is what happens, is how it's reflected. Awakening from below, I'm sorry. The awakening from below, the way a person awakens himself in this world below, is the way it's reflected above. You have the same expression also. It's expression in the Gemara, like the face reflects the face, like water reflects the face. So too, everything is reflected from above. The way that it's reflected from above is reflected the way we do it from below. So my friends, the Alter Rebbe says, if we can create a moment of a tzaddik in this world, we can act like a tzaddik in this world, whether it's a moment, whether it's an hour, whatever it takes. We should create a moment of tzidkus in this world. And then and it'll be granted to him the soul of the level of the spirit, the emotions of originated of the soul of some tzaddik will be impregnated in him so they may serve God with true joy. This is an interesting thing. In Kabbalah speaks of the soul of a tzaddik impregnating ibur. Ibur is impregnation, to be pregnant. Another soul with faculties so that the latter may serve God as tzaddik does. So the tzaddik, since a tzaddik also wants a yid to serve the Eibishter with joy, so if a person acts like a tzaddik, he decides that he's going to be a tzaddik. This moment, he's going to be a tzaddik. He's going to love God. He's going to meditate on God. He's going to abhor evil. He's going to love the Eibishter. The Eibishter might give him that a tzaddik in this world or out of this world will give him part of his neshama. The tzaddik is willing to do that, wants to do that. This concept is akin to Gilgul, migration, where his soul is attached to some object or animal or another human being, except that it's the case of Gilgul, the soul is chained to that domination of the body in which it attaches, whereby the case of Ibur, impregnation, it's not. The soul of tzaddik serves merely as an additional spiritual charge for the soul of the recipient. That's the concept also to connect to a tzaddik in general. We're trying to receive from the spirit of the tzaddik. Nafshe kshura benafshe, that our souls become bond one with the other, so that we'll be able to be inspired by the neshama of the tzaddik. Not that the tzaddik Gilgul is where the tzaddik neshama, where the one neshama comes into another neshama. Over here, we're not trying. The tzaddik doesn't want to come into your neshama. The tzaddik wants to inspire neshama. So he puts, that's what you have the expression in the Torah itself, where the Torah says, Moshe Rabbeinu should give his spirit to Yeshua. You give the spirit, give him your ruach. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu did. Moshe Rabbeinu gave his spirit to Yeshua. He impregnated Yeshua, so to say. He gave him his ruach. He gave him the spirit of his neshama. And that's what's called in Kabbalah the concept of Ibur HaNeshamas. So if I, for example, want to connect to a tzaddik, I want to be inspired by a tzaddik. I want the inspiration of the tzaddik. Just like the tzaddik has love of God and his passion and his delight in godliness, I want that delight in godliness also. Even though I know that I'll never be a tzaddik, but I want I want the concept of the light. I want happiness. I want a relationship with God. I want the relationship. Why was it only the tzaddik have that relationship, as we mentioned before in the Tanya, that the Alter Rebbe says that a tzaddik sees his life in his lifetime. He sees the life of the soul in his lifetime in the physical world. I also want to have that. So the question is, how much do I want that? How much do I want to have the spirit of the tzaddik? Meaning, I don't want the tzaddik. I want the spirit. I want the love of the tzaddik. That's like the tzaddik has love of God. And everything in the world is bottled to him. Everything in the world is nullified to him. Everything in the world is abhorrent to him. Especially this physical concepts of the world, the pleasures. So why can't I have that? So the Alter Rebbe says it's all dependent on my Asarusa Latata. If I truly desire that, then you leave that up to God. So we have a general rule: Asarusa Latata, the awakening from above, awakens something from below. Awaken from below, awakens up something from above. So if I may have a true awakening from below, maybe I'll have a true moment of true delight of godliness below. So in our context, this impregnation of the Beinani soul with the Ruach, originating the Tzaddik soul, enables the Beinani to experience the light of God. So the Alter Rebbe says that even the Beinani can have the light in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that he cannot contain on his own. So we should have to, so to say, have this Asarusa Latata, this awakening from below, train ourselves. Take the time to meditate on God, to create a love of God, whatever each and every one of us on our own level, and create this true ava to the Eibishter. And maybe God will grant us a moment of true ava to God. As it says, Simchu tzadikim b'Hashem. Rejoice, O tzadikim, in God. This alludes to the idea that there are two kinds of tzaddikim, because it's tzaddikim plural. Are joined together. The verse addresses tzaddikim in plural form. When the Beinani, called a lower level tzaddik, is impregnated with the soul of a tzaddik, of a higher level tzaddik, they both rejoice in God. For the tzaddik imparts his delight of godliness to the Beinani. So then the vow comes into an emes, a real truth. Then the vow, Tihi Tzaddik. So the Alter Rebbe ultimately ends this chapter, that the Beinani could become a Tzaddik, even if it's for a moment, for whatever the time it is. The Beinani could become the Tzaddik. And therefore, if the Beinani could become the Tzaddik, it's going to be impregnated by a Tzaddik. He's going to receive the Ruach, the spirit, the love of God from a tzaddik for that time. So then he'll accomplish the vow. Tihi tzaddik, you shall be a tzaddik. So in this way, the oath charging to be a tzaddik will truly fulfilled. It's not just act like a tzaddik, even though you're not a tzaddik, but actually you will become a tzaddik. Even if it's for a moment, you'll become a tzaddik. And therefore the Eibishter makes this neshama, make a vow. Be a tzaddik, because you could be a tzaddik. Even for a moment, because you can awaken up, you can beg God by contemplating godness, by creating a true avat l'Hashem, that the Eibishter will give you that moment, will give you that inspiration to be a tzaddik and to love God and to have a tainuk, to have a true delight in godliness. It's up to me. It's up to me, the Alter Rebbe says. It's in my capability to do it. And if I want to do it, I can do it. It's up to me. That completes the 14th chapter. Very powerful teaching of the Alter Rebbe today. Today is the 28th day of the month, which in Tehillim, it's chapter 135 to chapter 139. We do those 5 chapters. We do the chitas of the day. Wish you all a wonderful day. God bless you all. And may Shem, we'll see you all tomorrow, 8 o'clock. We'll continue the chitas.